Um, so just to give you a little bit of background about me, I am the director here at Local History Services at the Indiana Historical Society. I have been here at the Historical Society for right on 10 years. As a matter of fact, in mid-June, it will, I think June 12th or something, that will make my 10th year anniversary. I'm white, I'm middle class, I'm a cis woman with roots in Kentucky and Indiana. I live in a small, mainly rural community in central Indiana. My academic training is in medieval Spanish literature, and if we ever see each other outside of webinar world, you can ask me how I got from medieval Spanish literature to Indiana's local history organizations, and I can tell you all about it. I've worked in and with small to mid-sized museums as the executive director of a local historical site and a local historical society, as well as in the local history services department. I've also had leadership roles in various local organizations in various areas, and I do professional service. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Please let me know if you have any trouble seeing it. So to give you a little bit more background, because we're going to be talking today about organizational leadership, I want you to know a little bit about me and my leadership style. I think that gives you some background and helps you to know the lens that I am bringing into this particular webinar or discussion today. I'm pretty good at seeing big picture stuff and connecting disparate pieces and seeing the connection between things and sort of threads that are running through things. Detail is much harder for me. And sometimes that can lead to a little bit of fuzziness when I am communicating with folks, and sometimes in my thinking processes. It can also sometimes cause a little bit of a slow follow through on my end. When I work with people, I let them know that. I am upfront and I say, this is what I do. Here's a tendency I have. Please help me to see detail. Or, when I'm getting terribly, terribly excited about the big picture, please let me know to slow my roll so that we can sit down, we can think, and we can do planning. I also have relatively strong reactions in stressful, intense situations. I have to work hard at not sort of just starting, doing that whole, I've got this ball rolling and I'm going to say stuff and I'm going to do stuff. I need to remember to step back. I need to remember to take deep breaths. And I need to remember that that initial reaction is not always going to be the most appropriate reaction. That's another thing that I let folks that I work with know, that tends to be something that I do. As a matter of fact, here in Local History Services, sometimes I will go into a colleague's office and say, I just need to vent, or I say, I need some perspective on this, and then can you help me work through this? Keep that in mind as we go forward, that those are things that I do. Those are ways that I recognize that I need to work on myself. Those are areas where I try to be more aware of my tendencies when I'm in leadership positions. So today we'll talk about knowing your leadership style, understanding your organization, working with people, and incorporating leadership principles into guiding your organization. All of those things come together and work together. But I would say one of the most important things about that is knowing your leadership style, knowing where you are as a leader, and having an awareness about what you bring to interactions and what you bring to any situation that you're in as a leader. Your organization will take its cues from you as you're managing up and you're managing down and managing sideways, should that be something that you need to do. So effective leaders are folks who really work to understand themselves, their biases, their leadership styles. They kind of know who they are and where they are in any given situation. They are folks who want to ask questions, are willing to listen to answers, and have discussions. Sometimes when we're in leadership roles, we get to that, asking questions, we listen to answers, but that needs to be active listening. It needs to be listening to really find the answer, not to just respond. Sometimes we're okay with discussing issues. Sometimes that makes us a little uncomfortable. Where a lot of times we kind of drop that leadership ball is we don't provide follow-up or we don't provide updates. I also think that effective leaders are folks who are transparent and are willing to hold themselves responsible and accountable for decisions that are made, discussions that they have. They do their best to look at their organization objectively. They really do some assessment. They say, what do we need? Where are we as an organization? Where are we not as an organization that we need to be? And are there any culture shifts that we need to make? Just thinking in the last year, all of the changes we've had to make, transitioning rapidly to from on-site to virtual, looking at the political environment and social and racial justice and equity issues, really looking at our organizations and saying, where are we in that framework, and what do we need to change about our culture as an organization to make sure that we are doing the best. We need to think hard about diversity, equity, accessibility, and inclusion, and add those things into all of our decision-making and planning processes. We need to address them sooner rather than later. I also think effective leaders commit to being part of the community, and that's your organizational community, that's the community you serve, that is perhaps a larger community of people in similar leadership positions. Commit to being part of the community, not stepping back and assuming that things will happen, or assuming that people will know that you are there or that you are supportive. A mistake sometimes that leaders make is being silent. Even if you don't know what to say, silence can sometimes look like you're not being supportive or that you don't care. So say, I don't know what to say in this situation, but please, I am here. I will listen to you. That's very important. Leaders also understand about making hard decisions and what's non-negotiable, where they need to draw the line, where they need to be tough. So, and being honest about that, saying there are decisions that we are going to make that are going to be hard, and there are decisions that we make that some folks may not understand fully, but we have to make them. So making that part of that transparency and accountability piece of being an effective leader is very important. So I kind of led with myself. I'm going to another kind of I-centered moment in the webinar, but I think it's important to think about yourself as a leader, to identify your strengths, your weaknesses, the leadership style that is most comfortable for you. And I started learning about my leadership style about 20 years ago in a leadership course. We did a lot of personality kind of profiling. We did a lot of leadership profiles. We learned a lot about different styles of leadership. And the one that I settled on personally that felt the closest to my values and seemed to be the one that dovetailed with what I was thinking about in terms of my organization and changing my organization was servant leadership. And that's been around for quite some time. It's an idea that Robert Greenleaf talked about starting in 1970, and it is servant leadership is a philosophy and set of practices that enriches the lives of individuals, builds better organizations, and ultimately creates a more just and caring world. As a leader, that's kind of where I fall. I will say, though, that I throw in some situational leadership elements into that. So these are the principles of servant leadership. And really, if you look at them, they are very person-centered. They involve active listening. They involve acknowledging and working to understand where others are, and what has brought them to the point they are. It involves some awareness of yourself, your personal biases, um, your tendencies, the things that you bring to interactions and situations within your organization. Um, and it is sort of thinking of yourself as a steward of your organization and the people who are involved in that organization, the board, the staff, the volunteers, your members, the community. So really committing to know about people and see where they're coming from and understanding how they relate to your organization, and then steering your organization so that you are meeting their needs. It's also a lot about building community, and building relationships. So these are things that I work on. These are things that I do as a leader when I am here, sort of leading the local history services team in my prior work with local or as the director of local organizations. But I also throw in some situational leadership. So finding out what I can about the people involved and the community involved, and then recognizing that in a leadership role, there may be times that I need to adapt. So say I'm working with a group, and they're a little bit unsure of what their next steps are going to be, or they know what their next steps are going to be, but they're a little bit unsure about how to get there. Then I'm a coaching type leader. I'm in there and I'm saying, this, you've got this. Take that leap. It's okay. Or sometimes if I'm working with somebody and they're going great guns and they, are doing fine, recognizing that what they need is me to say, hey, how's everything going? If you have any problems, let me know. I'm here for you. But that project is yours until we need to check in or until you hit a hitch. We're good. So that's sort of that situational leadership aspect. You can find out about your leadership styles. And I do think this is really important. You can take those personality and leadership tests. You find them online. Some are more fun. Some are more valid than others. Some are longer. Take them and see if there is something that, and be brutally honest when you answer the questions, not who you would like to be, but who you actually are. And see if there's a thread that runs through them. See if there's something common. Enroll in leadership courses very often. Local community foundations, economic development, agencies will have leadership courses that they offer. Look for those. Get to know leaders you admire. Ask them questions. Ask them what they do, how they ended up where they are, what they're comfortable with, how they interact with the community, how they interact internally with staff and volunteers and boards members, and how they act externally, what works for them. And then look for leadership mentoring programs. If you can't find a leadership mentoring programs, go back to that leader you admire and say, are you open to working with me? Can you be a mentor for me? Can you be an ongoing source when I have questions about something? You'd be surprised how many people will say yes, and look forward to that opportunity. So at the same time as you're finding your style, if you don't already have one or know your style, you're also going to need to really think about your organization and where your organization is at this moment. This is something that I talk to groups about. Very often, organizations or groups of people form, a lot of historical societies started as like the Old Settlers Club. And then over the course of time, they evolved into a service organization. They sort of became that 501c3. They formalized processes. They really started to look at serving the community. So when you think about a club and its characteristics, um, they're like-minded individuals. It is more of a pure democracy. The members say yes or no, and that's what's going to happen. Very hands-on. A lot of the same people or all of the same people doing the same work, working on all of the projects together. Dues, they pay dues. That's kind of where the financial support for the club comes from. They don't have a lot of formal processes. Maybe they don't have a budget. And it really focuses on the members, those people who are in the club. When you move more to being a service organization, what you're looking at there is more diversity involved. So, you still have like-minded individuals. You still have individuals with the same interests and things like that. But what you see is broader interest. What you see is more diversity in what the members look like, what they do, who they are. A service organization is representative of a community as opposed to just sort of being inward looking. They have more formal processes. They do formal fundraising. There are membership dues, but there's fundraising beyond that. There are goals and plans and strategies to achieve those goals. They have a budget, financial reporting structures and things like that. And they are very outwardly focused. A club is very inwardly focused. So I'm going to preface this next slide by saying it is okay to be a club. There's nothing wrong with being a club if that's what you want to be. And just be a great club. That's okay. But for a lot of us, really, we are service organizations. And so what we need to do is make sure that we stay with those characteristics of a service organization and don't slide into that more inward, internal, tightly focused, narrow club type organization. When we're working with our communities, if you are more like a club, there's a perception that you're kind of a hobby, that you're not really serious. You do some good work, but it's these are like-minded people who get together who like to talk about the same things or who like to work on gardening and things like that. If you're a service organization, you're doing things more. It's more broad. Your community sees you as an asset. And very often they see you as an organization they can be a part of. Where sometimes with a club, it's a very small group of people, and perhaps it looks like a closed group of people. If you're a service organization, you get community support, you look for diversity, you look for those areas where you can include more folks. You're mission driven, so you look at your mission and the activities you take. The programs you do all have to do with that mission and furthering that mission. You're active and sustainable. People are continuing to support you. You have broad community support. You have the involvement of a lot of different people. And that makes you relevant in your community. So you're a sustainable organization. Clubs very often will stagnate. Sometimes you'll see, or maybe you know of, a historical organization that just can't get any more members, or just can't get any volunteers. What has happened is their focus has narrowed so much, and they have become a club very often without even knowing it, and then they start to stagnate, and that's when we see organizations close. This is the reality, is the club and the service organization are two extremes on a spectrum, and most organizations are somewhere in between them. The natural evolution is from a club to a service organization, and once you hit that service organization, though, that's where you want to stay. You want to be closer on the spectrum to a service organization than to a club. And as a leader, you need to watch for that. You need to say, where are we? Are we still a service organization, or have we slipped into that sort of more internal looking, closed, narrowly focused group? That is not necessarily where you want to be. as an organization, I would say that's never where you want to be if your intent is to be a service organization. And you need to understand that as you move along that spectrum, hopefully staying really close to that service organization, and the needs of the organization, the board, the staff, the members are going to change as the organization evolves. That keeps you from stagnating. Being a leader, recognizing that, being aware of the situation in your organization, being aware of your community situation, that will help you make good decisions and keep kind of pushing your organization to that service organization end of the spectrum. Ways that you do that are really looking at your mission, vision, and values. Those are, so when I started 20 years ago, we talked a lot about mission. Then we talked a lot about mission and vision. Now we're talking a lot about mission, vision, and values. What is changing is that we are seeing members, donors, volunteers looking for organizations that they can believe in, organizations that have a strong set of core beliefs and can express them. So a lot of times our supporters are want to know what our values are, and are looking for ways that those values dovetail with their own values. So when you think about these three statements, mission, vision, and values, they should answer the questions: where are we heading? Why are we going there? Who's coming along? And how will we get there? So, that's just a very, very broad brush to think about those. When you're looking at your mission, think of that as your basic building block. It's what do we do for whom? What's the need? How do we address that need? And who will benefit? As a leader, one of the things to do is for you to look at those questions and help guide the board, guide staff and volunteers to being able to effectively answer those questions and make sure that your activities and programs dovetail with the answers that you have. Mission statements vary greatly. They look very different. They are not set in stone. So as your organization evolves and changes, as you as a leader see, have the foresight to see where your organization is going, it may be that what you have to set, or what you need to think about setting in process, is the beginning of a change in your mission, or looking at parts of your mission and saying 10 years ago, this worked for us. Our situation is different. Our community is different. Our organization is different. Where do we need to go from here? What will be the most benefit? How do we as an organization do the greatest good? Your vision, that's the big picture. And this is something that can be aspirational. And it's okay to say, this is where we want to be. We're not there yet. We're not going to be there in 6 months. Maybe we're not going to be there in 5 years or 10 years. But what it does is it puts out there and says, what difference will we make? It answers that question. And this is where you identify impact. What will have changed in your community because your organization existed, because your organization did what it was supposed to do? It met its mission. It changed its mission. It as an organization, we did good things, and here's what happened as a result. Or here's what we hope will happen as a result. This can be a harder one. It feels very fuzzy to people. As a leader, push for it. As say, here's this. There's a three-legged stool: mission, vision, and values. And we need this vision. We need to know where we're going in the future. We need to say, here's the impact we want to make. Here's how we're going to make that impact in the next 3, 5, 10 years. And then we have values, and that is, what do we believe in? Your values represent the core beliefs of the organization. They inspire and guide choices in the way that you operate and in the way that you deal with people as an organization. They really need to be embedded in the mission and vision. this is where you say, this is where we're going to stand. As a leader, this is also where you say, these are the organizational values. But as a leader, step back, think to yourself, are the organizational values, are the core beliefs of my organization core beliefs I can stand behind? If I have to, can I defend them? Is this core belief of the organization so strong a core belief that I have, that if necessary, sort of, I'll have that fall on my sword moment. That's really important as a leader, to know where your boundaries are, to know in terms of your organization, can you stand behind this organization and its core beliefs? Can you be the person or lead a group of people and say, here's what we believe in. Here is where we're going to stand as an organization. Here's the side of history we're going to fall on. And that is becoming, as I said earlier, more and more important to the people we serve and the communities that we're in. And I think as a leader, if you can't stand behind the core beliefs of your organization, then maybe that's the time that you need to say, I'm going to affect change, I'm going to fight hard, or I'm going to leave. So that is sort of a personal part of being a leader, is looking at your organization and saying, I can wholeheartedly support this organization, and think, do I want to spend any part of my career in an organization that doesn't hold values that align with mine, or that I can't work to change for the better? So your values should answer the questions. What are the key principles that guide our organization? How will we define and implement these values for our organizations? And do they inspire pride and bring out the best in us? Sometimes, again, this is one of those areas where for some folks it can feel a little fuzzy. As a leader, work with your board, work with your staff, your volunteers, and really talk to them about this part of it, part of your organization. We're going to see an increasing need for that. You see that in investments. People who are saying, I don't want, my funds to support or to be invested in a company that I can't, that is doing things that I can't deal with, or that I just find so different from what I believe. Then you're going to have to think about people. So think about yourself, think about your organization, and then think about the people involved. Every organization has gaps, everyone. So as a leader, that's kind of where some of that internal assessment comes from. This is also where you may see some need for a culture shift. So do an internal assessment, figure out what your gaps are. Where are your diversity and inclusion gaps? Do you have knowledge gaps or skill set gaps? Know where they are, and then figure out or determine strategies for filling in those gaps. Recruiting new board members, looking at switching up maybe membership programs, looking at how you recruit and train volunteers, how you hire staff. Really think about that part. Think about the people gaps in your organization. Recognize that diverse groups are able to identify more issues and develop more meaningful solutions to those issues. In the business world, more and more studies are being done that show that industries and businesses with greater diversity in their staff, in their workforce, actually do better. They're more productive, they tend to make more money, they do better things. They do things that are more quality or higher quality. So look for that in your organization. Look for areas where you can bring in that diversity, where you can say, this will make us stronger. because the more people we have involved who look different from each other, the better. When you're looking at including diversity in your organizational planning and processes and things like that, be aware as a leader that one person is not representative of an entire group. I do not represent the entire white middle class cis woman community in my county. I don't. We don't all think alike. We don't all look alike. We don't all act alike. We don't all have the same values. As a leader, if you go down a path where you're looking at one person as representative of an entire group, that's a lot of responsibility to put on one person, on one volunteer, on one board member, on one staff member. And in some ways, it means that they can't fail. They're always under pressure to perform at peak. And that's really not fair to them, but it's also not fair to the group that they represent. Because groups of people are not homogenous. They are different, and they bring different things to the table. Also recognize everybody brings biases and past experiences. You do as a leader, everyone you work with does, your community as a whole, brings past experience to the table. Even if you're in a large community, if you're in a large city, you're dealing with sort of groups within that larger community. All of those groups are going to bring past experiences to the table. Those are the moments when people say, but we've always done it that way, or we've never done that before, or 20 years ago, we tried that and this happened. As a leader, recognize that's the baggage we bring. As a leader, recognize what you're bringing to the table. Recognize biases, recognize past experiences, figure out how to work to mitigate them for the good of your organization. Also, get comfortable with knowing not everybody is going to agree, and it is okay. You don't need consensus on everything. You don't need agreement on everything. Ideally, what you have is a situation that works. It is a situation that even when people don't agree, they're still respectful, they're still listening, they're still willing to do the work. But it's okay if not everybody agrees. But I think one of the things as a leader you need to think about is why. If the disagreement is strong enough, you need to talk to that person or maybe that group of people, and you need to say, what's going on? Let's talk. What's the important thing you need to say to me that I need to hear in this situation? And really be open to that. And as a leader, make sure that you're hearing different voices, even those voices of disagreement, and amplifying what needs to be amplified and recognizing their contributions, even in those moments of disagreement. Don't just recognize the people who say, yes, we're all on board. Recognize the people who say, I am not comfortable with this. And this is why. Or ask, help me see why. Help me understand why you're uncomfortable with this. And then, that may actually change the process of decision making. That may actually change the result. It may not. And if it doesn't, it's good to go back to that individual or that group and say, here's what happened. I heard, I listened, and as a result, this changed. Or at this time, we just don't have the capacity to do that. Or that won't work right now. Maybe it's that won't work ever because it doesn't fit with our mission or whatever it is, but go back and be honest. When you think about decision making, and this is something that I saw read in a book called Fierce Conversations by Susan Scott. It's an older leadership book, but it had some really good ideas in it. And this was one that I thought about when I was thinking about people and how you get people involved in decision making at your organization. And part of that as a leader is knowing what level of decision making folks should be involved in. Not everybody needs to be involved or should be involved in every decision. You know, really look at who needs to be involved in the decision, who needs to be in the room, who needs to be heard. It may not be everyone, but it does need to be as inclusive as you can make it in that decision. And so one of the things I really liked in terms of helping to focus, kind of deciding what level the decision making is done on, who needs to be at the table. And it kind of fits a little bit with that situational leadership aspect of figuring out, being aware of folks, being aware of people and where they're comfortable. So Scott saw decision making as a decision tree. So you have leaf decisions that you make the decision, you act on it. You don't need to report on the action you took. It's that one decision, it's one leaf in a tree full of leaves. The people you work with, they have the skill, they have the knowledge, they can make this decision, they can act on it, they know what they're doing, it's good. Then you have a branch decision. That's make the decision, act on it, and then report the action you took daily, weekly, or monthly. So, that's somebody that you say, you have the skill set, you know what you're doing, you've been running this program, but I'd like you to touch base with me. And here's how often I'd like you to touch base with me. Just so, we can see if maybe there are any hitches going on, or, maybe I, as the leader, can have some information you may not have at this point, and we need to touch base so that you can make changes or we can work on changes together. Trunk, make the decision, report your decision before you take action. So those are those decisions that actually, if the decision is not perhaps the best decision to have made, it could go way awry for you and your organization. And that's the one you need to think about, reporting before you take action. That's the one you say, here's what I'm thinking about. Here's the decision I've made as a leader. Will this work for you? And that could be, you report your decision to the board. You report your decision to the folks who will have to carry out the plan. But also this is kind of where you can say to the folks you lead, you can make this decision, but I need you to come to me before we take action on it. Again, because as a leader, you may have information they don't have. You may see the bigger picture that they don't see. You're the one who is talking to the board, and you're talking to your local elected officials, and you've had some member questions. And so you really want to make sure that you've gotten some input about that decision. And then root, make the decision jointly with input from many people. That root decision, that's the one, if it goes awry, could actually cause a problem a lot for your organization. If you think about, a plant root that is not strong, eventually the plant dies. So this is the one that as a leader, you need to say, I need a lot of input. I need to know a lot more than I know now. It may slow down the process, but really this is not a decision I can make on my own. I need more input from a lot of different people. This is also the one where maybe you look at that staff person and you say, that's a great idea. Let's have some meetings. Let's have some focus groups. Let's go out into the community. Let's get other people involved. Let's get the volunteers involved. Let's bring on the other staff members before we make this decision, to make sure that we've got enough input to make a good decision, because this could have repercussions for the entire organization. Hopefully positive, maybe negative, but we need to really know where we're going. I'm going to circle back to that, to a couple of things. Earlier, I said an effective leader knows their bias. They know where their biases are. When you're working with your organization, you need to know where your organizational biases are. And when you're working with people, you need to know what their biases are, or at least have some idea of the biases they're bringing to the table. Everyone has bias. Everyone has implicit bias. Because of the way our brains are wired, because of the way brains have changed over time, and the things that our brains do that we need to do to survive, they are hardwired to organize and categorize information subconsciously without our awareness. Our brains cannot think everything all the time and tell us what they're thinking all the time. So you can form judgments without even realizing it. Everybody does. And something you need to think about as a leader is, what are my biases? What biases am I bringing to interactions? And think about how to counter those, and then shift that out. What are my organizational biases? When I'm dealing with staff, volunteers, boards, the community, where are the biases there? And dig deep to see what the implicit biases are. So one of the ways to do that is focus on seeing individuals. See yourself as an individual. See, we talk about the board as if it's this big monolith. It's made up of individuals. What are their implicit biases? Work on adjusting your perspective. Figure out ways that you can help other folks adjust their perspectives. Maybe that is bringing in somebody to talk about bias. Maybe that is having discussions one-on-one with folks where you say, I am seeing this, and it's pretty serious. So we need to talk about it. Let's see, because that person you're talking to may actually be like, I don't have that bias. But then if you have a good conversation and an honest conversation, you may get to a point where they're like, oh, yes, I see it now. And then consciously work to change your stereotypes. Those biases very often come from stereotypes we hold. So my mom is blonde. She's a blue-eyed, blonde-haired woman, and with a very, very strong personality. When she was younger, very often people would approach her and tell blonde jokes as if she should laugh at a joke where people who looked like her were portrayed as being ditzy or not knowing what they were doing, and that would really, really frustrate her. Because then sometimes what people do would be to interact with her as if she was that persona in that blonde joke, in that stereotypical blonde joke. And that was a bias they brought to their interactions with her. So think about the stereotypes you hold, and think about whether you have biases that come from those stereotypes. On an organizational level, what do you hear or see maybe in exhibits or programs that as an organization you're playing into some stereotypes, and then how does that lead to bias in those labels, in those programs? And as a leader, how can you shift away from that? How can you change that perspective to make your organization more inclusive and more understanding in your community? Sometimes when you are talking to people about bias, they get very upset. They get uncomfortable because sometimes as you approach, as you're talking about bias, as you're getting closer to those biases, people become nervous. They can become combative because sometimes what you're doing is challenging deeply held beliefs, or you're destabilizing what they know. If that stereotype is something that they have seen in their textbooks about history, say about Native Americans in history, and they started learning that in their kids' books, and then they learned it in their textbooks, and they're continuing to learn some sort of stereotypical or see some sort of stereotypical portrayal of Native Americans in your museum, and all of a sudden you say, but this is not right. We are going to fix this. We are going to check our bias. We're going to check our stereotypes. What you're asking folks to do is challenge what they've learned for years and years. That's okay, as a matter of fact, is something we should do. It is important for us to do. It's important for us to tell the whole story, to tell other perspectives, and the ones people aren't hearing. But we also need to understand that on some levels we're destabilizing what they know, and that touches on identity. It touches on deeply held beliefs, and what that may do, both in the community and in your organization, is create some tension. So as a leader, it's important for you to recognize and work to de-escalate it. So before you enter any situation, think about potential conflicts. I do. I think about barriers. I think about hot button issues. When I work with an organization, particularly if they're in a touchy situation, I will very often say, what are your hot button issues? When I go into this meeting, what do I need to know? What are the places that I may unintentionally hit a hot spot? Let me know. And then that way I can figure out a workaround, or I can figure out how to mitigate it, or I can figure out how to approach it. I'm not learning about those so I can avoid them. I'm learning about those so that I can figure out good techniques. I can recognize them and think of techniques for de-escalating in these situations. Read the room, look for changes in physical stance, tones of voice, topic focus. Sometimes you'll be talking about something and you think it is perfectly okay, and somebody hears something that either you didn't say or you said poorly, and they're going to react. So listen for that, and be aware, read the room. Don't be afraid as a leader to say, we need to take a break, or to say, I think, let me know why you're uncomfortable. Kind of dig deeper into that, and then say, all right, so let's talk a little bit more about this. Let's figure out ways that we can get over this, so we can work through it. It's not about avoidance. It is about working through it. Know some basic de-escalation techniques. Earlier, I said I react really strongly in tense and stressful situations. I have to take time to calm myself. I actually wear a bracelet that reminds me to take some deep breaths. In my office, I have a coffee mug that on one side it says pause. So I have some things that help me remember, take a step back, calm down, let me assess this situation, let me think about this, and then help me as a leader get into a position where I am really listening to the other person's concerns. I'm not thinking about the response. I'm not thinking, well, I disagree with you and I'm going to convince you to come around to my point of view. I'm really listening. I'm paying attention to how I sound, how I'm standing. And then, so recognize when you've done all you can and step away. And I apologize for that last bullet point. That actually came from a different presentation, so I apologize. But I will say that you could call, if you're in a situation that is difficult, and you don't know how to work around it, you actually can call local history services and ask us and say, I've got this situation coming up, and I don't know what to do with it. I think it's going to be tense, or it already feels tense, and I don't know what I should do. And we can offer advice for different ways of thinking about it. Or, sometimes in your organization, when you're dealing with a problem, what you're dealing with may actually be a symptom. And as a leader, what you need to do is look for the root cause, because you can fix symptoms all day long. And if you're not getting to the cause of the problem, the bigger issue, then those symptoms are just going to keep reoccurring. And sometimes talking to somebody can help. You may be too close to the situation. You may be too emotional. Your biases may have just, come on hard and heavy at that point. And sometimes another perspective can help. So something that I wanted to make sure about is, when you're thinking about planning, when you're thinking about decision making, when you're thinking, and this is an example of some plans that I think every organization should eventually have or be working on, really bring that leadership lens to your planning processes. Think about yourself, think about your organization, and think about people. And then as you're doing that, work to shift your relationships from transactional to transformational. So be intentional about diversity and inclusion, be intentional about bringing people on board and really talking to them about what you need, what your community needs, what the organization needs. Look at relationship building. Understand that sometimes there are relationships that are one-off, that are transactional, and that's okay. I would say as a leader, work to have transformational relationships more often than you have transactional relationships. So, if you're going to talk to somebody, if you're doing an exhibit, say on African American history in your organization, and you say, we really need folks on our advisory committee or folks to help us with African American history, a transactional way is to say, come to a few meetings, tell us about your history, come and take a look at this label. Are these pictures okay? Okay, we're good, we're done. Transforming that relationship is, we would like to do an exhibit on African American history. It is underrepresented, but it is not, say, as an organization that has focused on primarily white history. That's not our story to tell. It is your story to tell. And being willing as a leader to say, we'll turn authority over to you. We'll be real partners with you. That is a transformational relationship. It is inviting people to the table, asking, hearing, listening, and acting, and then saying, it is your story. What parts of this story do we need to give to you? How can we be supportive in telling that story? What do you need from us? But telling the story is up to you. And this is something that you hear a lot when folks talk about accessibility, that idea of nothing about us without us. So transforming relationships as a leader is about recognizing that you're not always the expert, that you don't have to have all of the control. Your organization doesn't have to have all of the control. It is becoming more comfortable with shared authority. It is recognizing the stories that perhaps your current staff can't tell because it's not their story to tell. And then, as you do that, as you're learning to share authority, as you're learning to bring those other voices in, expect some things that are more uncomfortable. Expect that people are going to say, here's the part of our story that doesn't get told. And maybe it's that part of the story that doesn't get told. That is the hardest part of the story. It's the most uncomfortable part of the story. And then think back to those moments where you think, okay, as a leader, how can I guide this conversation? How can I be aware of all of the swirl that may be happening in this conversation? And how can I lead a good discussion so that I am best serving my organization, my community, and all of the people involved? So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen now. And I want to, does anybody have any questions? I can actually, if you'd like me to, I can go through, you can type them in the chat. You can let me know, and I can, allow you to talk, which really seems very strange to me in this situation about leadership, that I have a button that actually literally says allow to talk. So do I have any questions, thoughts, slings and arrows in our last 4 minutes? All right. I do want to let you know that the recording of this, I'll be sending out a link to a recording of the webinar to you in the next week. By the end of next week, you'll get that link. You'll also get a link to a survey. If you could take it, that would be awesome. It helps us know where we need to improve so that we can better serve your needs. If you have any questions about anything I said, or you want to talk further, please feel free to email me and let me know that you like to chat. We can chat via email. We can do a Zoom chat. We can even talk on the phone. So, you know, as you're cogitating, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And I do want to thank you all for hanging out in the webinar this afternoon, and wish you a good rest of your day. Stay safe and think about leadership.